In composing music, there's an element of, it's a kind of like joyful ordering. The idea of variation, right? It's a very orderly kind of thinking that is very intimately connected to emotions.
Anna has always written music that is rhythmically very challenging. So I've played at least 2 of her string quartets, cello and violin duo. Like everything is always intricate. And she found a way in this piece to do that within a kind of fluid writing that makes it easy suddenly. It's kind of cool. Yeah, it's such a fun piece to play.
Listening to music, especially music of a certain kind, that it's like you're reading with your skin, right? That you're having a reading experience, being taken through a story that is also sensory, because sound is sensory. So this idea of inventing a character who composed this piece of music, it was connected to thinking about point of view, which I very much associate with reading fiction. But just the idea of it sort of inhabiting a person's wishes, a person's regrets, a person's hopes, a person's experience, by imagining this character's possible approach to writing a piece of concert music, to writing in a sort of modern style, right? A rock musician who is kind of looking over a fence at a thing that he didn't actually pursue, but wonders about, a life he might have had he sort of gone down that road.
Where Carrie and I do that together, I feel like that's supposed to be a rock and roll thing.
Yeah.
But I feel so dumb going because if you were playing guitar, you'd just be going.
Yeah.
And somehow I just can't do that and stay together.
Well, maybe it's because I'm totally trying to embody my inner whatever.
The more we can
rock
make
and roll
it
musician.
feel loose, the better it will be.
I think if it stays brushy and doesn't go jumpy as you do the diminuendo, it helps, right?
What's my relationship to rock and roll? Do I really let loose, or is it like a really strong rhythmic thing, or is it a, what's my relationship to that? I get to choose. I get to bring that out. I mean, I know in those yada dee da 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 yada da, they're doing all in double stops at the end of the 8th movement. I like to really group them because I like yada dee da 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 against the 3 against the big 2 or 4 and the rest of the group. But somebody else might, she's marked them all with accents, so somebody else might play them really insistent in that way. I like more of a groove, so that's personal, right? Yeah.
I'm not a blues composer, so it didn't feel authentic to sort of write blues. But in this context, the idea that there could be a movement that's a blues movement in a sort of slightly obscured way, or there's one that's a folk song movement, There's a lament that has more classical associations, although a lament bass is all over pop music. So just going ahead and using those musical spaces, that was a reveal for me as a composer.
And so she finds her own voice using these very limited motives through all these different kinds of forms and styles and approaches. It's really it's really fantastic. It's fun to discover how she does that.
This is wonderful with sudden passion. So here's our 5-note motive that will have words attached to it later in the piece. Ya-da-da-da-dee. And everything until then has just sort of been color and rhythm and harmonic sound. And then here is this like hyper-personal expression. It's like the first, it's kind of cool because it's the first thing that feels really personal in the whole piece. And we're all doing exactly the same thing, and it's 5 repeated notes. I just think that's so great.
But then in the second movement, she notates how you broke my heart underneath it. It's also absolutely sort of the expressive center of the whole piece.
The idea of vibrato color is that it would be. I think of it as like it's a private passion, a private little bit of anguish rather than a sort of public one. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I wouldn't want the vibrato to turn it into like a kind of, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? An outward facing.
Because I think you're right, we are missing an opportunity. Maybe there's a way that because they're all separate, right? And there's so much expression in the bow and in the group and in the gesture. Maybe the vibrato can just be the legato of the, right? Like the sound spinning.
To me, that moves in a way that we don't always get.
Her marking just gives us permission to imagine the sound and then fill it in with the notes and rhythms.
She leaves room for the performers to imagine the sound rather than find, follow instructions, right, about how to produce the sound. So it's the same with clouds. You imagine the sound, you imagine what that sounds like, and then you read the markings as sort of helpful indicators of how to get that. But really, you're using more of your interpretive self as an individual to be able to evoke what she's put on the page.
At 85, at the end of the first movement, feathery. There's something about, if we could just try that 85, I feel like it takes a second for the color there to come into focus. And I think the presence of the pitch, the kind of the color and the fuzzy color and the presence of the pitch is more important than rhythmic accuracy for sure. Like I want just these sort of blend. At the end of the first movement, it's been very energetic and it's like loud, messy rock and roll bowing. But then it releases into these little clouds that are sort of the transition into the next movement that are certainly territory that's more associated with modern, avant-garde, I guess, sounds. they're written in a way that where their polyrhythms mean that I hope you have this sort of cloudy effect. You can't quite, it's not about hearing exact coordination, it's about creating the effect of this sort of cloud. But we had to take a moment and say, okay, they talked about getting into it as a gesture. I'm probably asking for conflicting things here, but the color is really important, not sort of the clarity of line, or I'm not looking for like a super pretty sound, but like a
Instant clouds and feathery.
Yes, yeah, I mean, obviously.
But maybe, okay, so since Eric goes right into the end of the measure,
Yeah.
we either need to take a breath, or we need to sort of start with a gesture that is sort of more, it's going to sound like a whoosh of sound that then we can come away from.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
want to try? Okay, so no breath, and we'll just try like.
Just do 2 bars. Can we just do 2 bars?
Yeah.
I think 81 would be a good place to start.
Okay.
I do wonder about notation in 50 years because it seems to be changing a lot. Music is being made so much now without notation at all. And a great deal of care has gone into the notation.
I love these markings. Okay, so these are the dancing longing markings where, like, you know, we're just these dorori is moving through the voices, and she wants this slightly different feeling between longing and then dancing, and then longing and then dancing, and then it becomes more insisting, but still dancing and insisting and dancing, and then it climaxes in our triumphant blaring. I love how she paces this last movement. It's just amazing.
A great deal of care went into the notes, but also the dynamics and the tempos, and but always with the understanding that the players bring an interpretive role, and that they have an influence on how it's going to sound, and that the only time when it actually exists for real is in the live moment, and every live performance is a little bit different. That's part of the deal. The idea that there will be slight variations, slight changes. I guess I don't imagine enormous changes, but yeah, you never know.